Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I moved to that apartment in 1999 after my last relationship fell apart. The place was a dump, honestly. It sat above a closed down storefront, and the whole building had maybe 6 parking spots total in the alley out back. The rest of us had to fight for street parking, which in that neighborhood was like playing the lottery. I was working at a call center during the day and taking night classes twice a week, trying to get my associate degree. Money was tight, but I was making it work. My girlfriend and I had been together for about 4 months at this point. She lived across town and didn't come over often because of the parking situation. I felt bad about it. She had this beat-up Honda that she babied like it was a Mercedes, and I hated making her hunt for parking in the snow and cold. So when she told me she was coming over on Friday night, I decided to do something nice. The thing is, I didn't have a car. Mine died 2 months earlier, and I've been taking the bus everywhere. So I also didn't have a snow shovel or any of the normal winter tools people keep in their trunks. But there was this massive snow bank in the alley, and I figured if I could carve out a spot, she could park there. Simple, right? I grabbed what I had, a claw hammer from my toolbox, an old plastic ice cream bucket from under the sink, and just went at it with my bare hands when those weren't enough. The snowbank was in fresh powder. This was the compacted, semi-frozen crud that the plows had been building up for weeks. It was like chipping away at concrete. My hands were raw and freezing, but I kept going. It took me an hour and a half to dig out a space big enough for a car. I'm talking a chunk maybe 10 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 6 feet deep into that bank. My back was killing me. My fingers were numb, but I felt proud, you know? I'd done something nice for her. I didn't have anything fancy to mark the spot, so I grabbed a piece of cardboard from my recycling, wrote on it with a marker. I spent an hour and a half digging this out for someone specific. Please do not park here. I figured that would be enough. I mean, who would be that much of a jerk? I went back upstairs, took a hot shower, and waited for my girlfriend to arrive. She called me around 7 and told me she was about 5 minutes away. I said okay and that I'd see her soon. I went to the window and looked down at the alley. My stomach dropped. There was a Lexus parked in the spot I'd cleared. My cardboard sign was gone. I ran downstairs and checked the dumpster. Sure enough, someone had thrown my sign away and just taken the spot. I stood there in the cold, staring at this car, feeling my face get hot despite the temperature. I didn't tell my girlfriend what happened. I didn't want to sound like a whiner or make her feel bad. When she arrived, she found parking on the street a block away and walked over. We had a good night, watched a movie, ordered pizza, just hung out. But the whole time, part of my brain was stuck on that Lexus. She left around 2 a.m. because she had an early shift. I tried to go to bed but couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all that work I'd done and how someone just took it without a second thought. By 4 a.m., I was still awake and still furious. The car was still there. The streets were dead quiet. The bars had closed hours ago. I had a bottle of isopropyl alcohol in my apartment that I used for cleaning electronics. 100% pure. I grabbed it and went back downstairs, quiet as I could. The alley was empty. No one around. I unscrewed the cap and started pouring the alcohol on the tires, moving from one to the next. It wasn't a huge bottle, maybe a liter, so I just did enough on each tire to get them wet. My hands were shaking, partly from the cold and partly from the adrenaline. I pulled out my lighter and touched the flame to the first tire. It caught immediately. I moved to the next one, then the next, then the last one. The flames were small and blue at first, dancing on the rubber. I grabbed my cardboard sign from the dumpster and used it to sweep snow over my footprints, then went back inside. I sat by my window and waited. A few minutes later, bang. Then kapow, then blam, and finally boom. Each tire exploded one after another. I'd expected the whole car to go up in flames like in a movie, but the force of each tire bursting put out the individual fires. The explosions were loud enough that I thought for sure someone would come running out, but nothing happened. I didn't sleep that night. I kept my police scanner on, terrified that somehow they'd trace it back to me. But nothing came through until late the next morning. There was a knock on my door around 11. I looked through the peephole and saw two police officers. They told me they were going door to door because there had been an incident in the alley last night. They asked if I had heard anything. I told them no and that I must have slept through it. I asked what happened, trying to sound concerned. They explained that someone had vandalized the vehicle and asked me to call if I thought of anything. I said sure, and told them I hoped they caught whoever did it. They left, and I went back to my scanner. Over the next few hours, I pieced together what happened from the radio chatter. No witnesses, no cameras. The owner only had liability insurance, which meant he was on the hook for all the damage himself. Later that afternoon, I took my trash out just to see the aftermath. The car was still there, and it looked rough. The tires were shredded, obviously. But there was also smog damage all over the body, and the paint had bubbled and peeled in places near the wheels. I figured it was at least $2,000 in damage, probably more. The owner was standing there talking to a tow truck driver. I got a good look at him. Orange spray tan, hair slicked back with enough gel to survive a hurricane, leather pants in the middle of winter. He looked exactly like the kind of guy who would throw away someone's sign and steal their parking spot. Grade A douchebag. The car got towed away that afternoon. I never saw it again. No one ever came knocking on my door again either. I kept that parking spot clear for my girlfriend the rest of the winter. Nobody ever parked there again. I used to work as a property manager in Japan, handling a bunch of hostels and guest houses. It was a pretty cool job most of the time, dealing with travelers from all over the world. I got into this line of work after moving to Japan to study hospitality management. After graduation, I landed this position because I could speak both English and Japanese fluently, which was super useful when dealing with international guests. The company I worked for owned several budget accommodations across the city, and I was responsible for making sure everything ran smoothly, training staff and handling any issues that came up. The job was usually pretty straightforward. Most guests understood what they were booking when they chose a hostel or guest house. But during peak seasons, things could get wild. Golden Week was always the worst, or the best depending on how you looked at it. Prices would shoot up like crazy because everyone in Japan had time off at the same time, and tourists flooded in from everywhere. To give you some context about our pricing during normal season on weekdays, we charged about 1,000 yen per night, which is roughly $10. That was for one single bed in a bunk bedroom, shared with other people. Weekends would cost more, around 3,000 yen or $30. Anyone who has stayed in hostels knows the deal. You share the room, you share the bathroom, you share everything. It keeps costs down, and you meet interesting people along the way. I had just finished training this new receptionist, a young woman from Michigan. She was absolutely perfect for the job. Friendly, quick learner, positive attitude, everything you could want. After a week of training, I felt confident enough to let her handle her first solo shift. I told her if anything went wrong, just send me a text, and I would come straight down to help her out. We had cameras in the lobby recording everything, which was mainly to protect our staff from aggressive guests who might try to twist what happened during a confrontation. So she was on her first shift alone when her first guest arrived. Some guy in his early 30s seemed friendly enough at first. They chatted a bit. Turns out he was also from Michigan, small world, all that stuff. Everything seemed fine. Then I got a text from her. Just one word asking for help. I rushed down to the front desk immediately. The guy looked furious now, completely different from how he appeared when he first walked in. He demanded to speak to a manager the second he saw me. I introduced myself and asked what the problem was. He started complaining that my staff had shown him his room and it was just a bed with other people already inside. I asked him if he had booked a private room, trying to understand the situation. He got more agitated and said he refused to share his space with people who potentially had diseases or might snore. He pointed at my poor receptionist and complained that she had told him he only had one bed in this massive room. He demanded a private room right away. I told him I needed to check his reservation first. I pulled up his booking on the computer and saw exactly what he had reserved. I told him that according to our system, he had booked a bed in the 10-person dormitory room, so there was nothing we could change about it. He then demanded an upgrade and told me to get him a private room. I explained that I would love to help him, but unfortunately we were completely full for the night. He seemed frustrated and said fine, he wanted a refund then because there was no way he was staying here. He announced he would find another place. I told him that was up to him, but unfortunately, I couldn't give him a refund. I explained that he had made his reservation through a travel agency and they had their own cancellation policy. In his case, he needed to cancel 2 weeks before arrival to get a full refund. He called it nonsense and insisted he never wanted to book a bed in a dormitory. He asked if we were crazy and questioned who would even do that. I asked him to please calm down and explain that we just received his reservation exactly as he made it. I also pointed out it was actually a very good deal since he made the reservation more than 6 months in advance when our prices were at their lowest. He said he didn't care and demanded his refund again. I tried to explain that he had paid online, so the only people who could refund him were the booking service he used to make the reservation, not us. He accused us of trying to screw him over and demanded to speak to a manager again. I reminded him that I was the manager, like I had already said. I apologized for the trouble he was going through, but repeated that I couldn't refund him. I even advised him to stay, telling him it was a nice place where he would meet good people to hang out with. He said he didn't care about people and just wanted his privacy. I decided to dig a little deeper to understand what happened. I asked him why he had booked a bedroom in a dorm if he didn't want it. He admitted he didn't know what he was booking and had just picked the cheapest place he found on the internet. I asked him to clarify if he had booked a place without even reading what he was booking. He confirmed that was correct. I then asked if he wanted us to refund him for a mistake that he had made. He got defensive and insisted he didn't make a mistake, he just didn't know what he had booked. He asked again if he could please get a refund. In situations like this, we usually call the travel agency customer service on speakerphone. It helps avoid having guests curse at us or claim we said things we didn't say. I called them up and explained the situation. I told the representative that I had a guest with a specific booking number who wanted a refund for his reservation. The representative asked what the reason was. I explained that the guest had made a mistake and didn't know what he booked. The representative seemed confused and asked me to repeat what I said, clearly surprised by the reason. I confirmed that the guest had made a reservation for a bed in a 10-person bedroom and didn't expect to share the space with other people. The guest interrupted and corrected me, insisting that wasn't it. He said he just booked the cheapest place he found and didn't expect it to be a dorm. The representative asked the guest if he had made a booking on their website, and he confirmed he had. They asked if he received a confirmation email, and he said yes. When they asked if he read that email, he said there was no need to because all these emails are the same anyway. The representative explained that they send those emails to make sure customers know what they've booked. They told him that if he didn't read his reservation, the establishment couldn't be held responsible for that mistake, and unfortunately the refund couldn't be processed. He called it nonsense again and said he wanted to cancel anyway because this place sucked and he wasn't staying here. The representative tried to reason with him, saying they didn't want to sound rude but would strongly advise him not to cancel. They explained that prices were crazy right now, and the single bed on his reservation cost only 1,000 yen plus tax, while the current price was about 12,000 yen per night for one bed in most hostels. He dismissed this as nonsense and accused them of just wanting to take his money. The representative asked him to please not swear, and reminded him that everyone was remaining polite so far. He insisted again that he wanted to cancel the reservation right now. I spoke to the travel agency representative and confirmed they had heard the guest's request. I said that the guest with that specific reservation number wanted to cancel, and I would cancel the reservation according to his wish. The representative confirmed the cancellation and wished me a good day. The guy grumbled and cursed as he headed toward the door. He threatened that he would get his money back one way or another and complained that our place sucked and the service was terrible. After he left, I looked at my new receptionist. She seemed shaken but handled it well. I reassured her that not all guests were like that. She smiled and joked that not everyone in Michigan was like that either. We both laughed and got back to work. Later that evening, around 7:30 p.m., it started pouring rain. The kind of heavy rain that soaks you in seconds. And guess who came walking back through our door? Completely drenched. He apologized for what he did earlier and admitted he got a bit carried away. He asked if he could still have his bed. I explained that, as he had requested, his reservation had been cancelled, and someone had already made a reservation for that bed. I told him we were completely full now. He asked desperately where he was supposed to sleep, saying everything was either too expensive or fully booked. I gave him some advice about places he could stay up all night in Japan, like internet cafes or fast food restaurants where you could sit if you kept ordering food. I mentioned that these places couldn't be held responsible for his belongings though. I even gave him addresses of a few hotels that might have availability. That bed he gave up for 1,000 yen, we sold it for 15,000 yen to someone else who was desperate for a place to stay during Golden Week. A few days later, the travel agency contacted us. The guy had sent them an email claiming he never came to our place, never even came to Japan. They asked us to verify his claim. I simply sent them the camera footage from the lobby showing our entire afternoon conversation, which proved he had definitely been there and said everything I reported. I'm 30 years old, and my girlfriend is 35, works as a college professor with a PhD, and she's one of the smartest people I've ever met. But what really makes her special is her passion for the 1960s. It started when we first met. She mentioned she was doing research on the decade, and I thought it was just academic interest. But the more time I spent with her, the more I realized it was something deeper. She knows everything about that era, the music, the politics, the fashion, the social movements. My own mother was born in the 60s, and my girlfriend knows more about it than she does. Honestly, I find it endearing. When she talks about the 60s, her whole face lights up. She gets this excited energy, and her eyes sparkle. How could I not love that about her? This year, we decided to take the next step and move in together. Things have been going great. She got promoted at work recently, which was a huge deal. She's now leading a collaborative project with 2 other colleges, and I was so proud. To celebrate, I planned a surprise night out with her friends. She deserved it after all her hard work. We also decided to host a Christmas party at our new place. We sent out invitations in early November, including one to an old friend of mine. We've been close years ago, but life got busy and we drifted apart. Our schedules never seemed to line up anymore. Then, in November, we finally managed to coordinate our calendars and met up for coffee. I was excited to catch up after so long. We sat down, ordered our drinks, and started chatting about life. He asked how my girlfriend was doing and whether I was still with the professor. I told him she was doing great and that she'd just gotten promoted at work. He seemed interested, so I explained that I was planning a surprise night out with her friends to celebrate because I was really proud of her. He said that was cool of me. We continued talking, asking about each other's families and jobs. Everything seemed normal at first. Then I mentioned her current projects. I explained that she was really busy these days because besides the new work project with the other colleges, she was also doing personal research on the 1960s in her own time. That's when his expression changed. There was this pause, and then he started making comments. At first, they were subtle digs, but they got progressively worse. The ones I can actually repeat without getting too angry were bad enough. He called her a weirdo. Just flat out said she was such a weirdo. I just stared at him, not sure if I'd heard correctly. Then he said he was personally surprised she was even in a relationship considering the fact she's a nerd. I asked him to excuse me, trying to give him a chance to take it back, but he kept going. He said her obsession was so weird and that it was amazing she still had friends at all. I felt my blood pressure rising. This was someone I'd invited into my home, someone I'd considered a friend, and he was sitting here insulting the woman I love. I asked him what the hell was wrong with him. He just shrugged and said he was being honest. I told him he was being a jerk and asked him what was wrong with her being passionate about something. He insisted it was weird, and that I had to admit it was weird. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked out. He could pay the bill for both of us for all I cared. I drove around for a while trying to cool down. The nerve of him. Who says things like that about someone else's partner? After a few hours, I felt calm enough to go home. When I got back, my girlfriend was working on her laptop at the kitchen table. I told her I needed to talk to her about something and that I was uninviting our friend from the Christmas party. She looked up and asked why. I explained that we'd met up that day and that he'd said some really nasty things about her. She asked what kind of things he'd said. I told her everything. She looked up from her laptop, processed it for a moment, and then said she wasn't bothered by what he'd said. She told me he could still come if I wanted him to. I said absolutely not, and that he'd disrespected her and I wasn't having him in our home. She insisted it was really fine and that she didn't care what he thought. But I told her that I cared and that he wasn't coming. I sent him a message on Messenger that night explaining that he was no longer invited to our Christmas party because of his rude comments about my girlfriend. He responded immediately and we got into a heated argument through messages. He claimed I was being oversensitive and that he was just joking around. I told him his jokes weren't funny and that he crossed a line. I said there was nothing funny about insulting someone's intelligence and interests. Then, silence. I didn't hear from him for a full day. The next evening I started getting messages from mutual friends. Apparently, he'd reached out to them complaining about the situation. They were telling me I'd overreacted, that I should give him another chance, that it wasn't that serious. One mutual friend messaged, saying I was being too harsh and that he didn't mean anything by it. Another one told me to come on, that we'd been friends forever and that I should just let it go. A third friend said I was making a big deal out of nothing and that my girlfriend probably didn't even care. This wasn't just one slip of the tongue or a poorly thought out joke. He'd made multiple comments, each one meaner than the last. He called her a weirdo, questioned why she was in a relationship, mocked her friendships. How could I invite someone like that into our home? How could I sit at a table with him, knowing what he thought about the woman I love? My girlfriend continued working on her projects, unbothered by the whole situation. She's always been confident in who she is, but I kept thinking about it. Why should she have to tolerate someone who looks down on her? Why should I maintain a friendship with someone who can't respect the person I love? Just because she has an interest in a particular decade doesn't make her weird or unworthy of friendship. If anything, her passion makes her more interesting than most people I know. I thought about all the time she'd stayed up late reading about civil rights movements, about the music that defined a generation, about the cultural shifts that shaped modern society. I thought about how she could connect historical events to current issues with such clarity. I thought about how her students adored her because she made history come alive for them. And this guy thought she was weird for that. This guy thought her intelligence and passion were flaws. I realized then that I didn't want him at our party. I didn't want him in our home. I didn't want him anywhere near my girlfriend. The mutual friends kept messaging. One said I was throwing away a long friendship over something stupid. Another said I was being controlled by my girlfriend, which made me even angrier because she'd literally said she didn't mind if he came. This was my decision, my choice to stand up for her, even when she didn't ask me to. I told them all the same thing. I explained that he'd made multiple cruel comments about my girlfriend, not just one. I said he'd insulted her intelligence, her interests, and her relationships. I asked them how they would feel if someone said those things about their partners. Most of them went quiet after that. A few still insisted I was overreacting, but I stopped responding to those messages. The Christmas party came and went. It was wonderful without him there. My girlfriend wore a vintage 60s style dress she'd found at a thrift store, and she spent the evening talking with guests about her research project. Someone asked her about the differences between early 60s culture and late 60s culture, and she launched into this fascinating explanation about how the Kennedy assassination and the Vietnam War shifted public consciousness. Everyone was captivated. I watched her from across the room, holding a glass of wine, and I felt so proud. This was the woman he'd called a weirdo. This brilliant, passionate, kind woman who made everyone around her smarter and more curious about the world. After the party, when we were cleaning up, she thanked me for defending her even though she'd said it didn't bother her. She admitted that it had bothered her a little bit, but she didn't want to make a big deal about it. She said she was used to people not understanding her interests, but it meant a lot that I stood up for her. I never responded to those mutual friends who said I'd overreacted. Some friendships aren't worth keeping, especially when they require you to compromise your values or the dignity of the people you love. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.